Some of us obviously love winter riding. It's a must. Gets us outside, fresh air, splash through puddles, lovely. Your bike, however, doesn't like it as much as you do, and it can really be a nightmare for components. Wearing brake pads, your rims, your rotors, your gears, the cables, the sprockets, the chains, all sorts of stuff can go wrong. You could just choose not to ride through winter. No, I want to ride my bike. So what options are there which make it easier and less damaging on your pocket? Well, single speeding isn't a new advent. And yes, the bike's been around forever with gears and without gears, but there seems to be a resurgence in single speeding. What I've got is a 1 conversion kit from Gusset, and I'm going to throw on an old BMX crankset to this Rock Lobster and see how much fun single speed really can be. I have no idea how it's going to work for me. Also, there's factors to consider how your dropouts are. They need to be eccentric or straight, or have some adapters so you can fit chain tensioners, like using the mech hanger you would do where your derailleur would normally go. One of those things to consider is obviously the gear ratio as well. Too big a cog at the back and you'll be spinning forever. Too small and your legs will just explode, and nobody's knees need that. But what are the risks? Well, you might find yourself at a climb, but if it's too steep, just walk it. Walking is okay. Maybe you can't go as fast as you like on the flats. That's okay. Going slow is also okay. And for me, aesthetically, a single speed bike looks quite nice. So let's get into the workshop and start setting this up. And well, we'll go for a ride later and find a hill for me to walk up, because being on camera and talking and riding makes me out of breath. So before setting out on your single speed journey, you're going to want to think about removing the gears, the cassette, the shifters and the cabling from your current bike. Something that's pretty straightforward with Allen keys, but what you can do is put together a kit which is specific to your bike, and that means specialist tools, so i.e. chain whips, cassette tools and bottom bracket removal items. You'll notice here that I'm using a chain whip and a cassette tool, specific to the Shimano HG system. If yours is a SRAM free hub, it may be a different tool, but make sure to check with the bike manufacturer or check out the manual that came with your bike. I had SLX cranks on here, which are Holotech 2 compatible, so that means I have a tool specific to that bottom bracket. You might have something different like square taper. Of course, we can try and answer some questions in the comments, so don't hesitate to ask, and we can try and give you the answers there. What's important to consider is the ratio you're going to set your bike up before you set out on this journey. A good rule of thumb is 2 to 1. And that means doubling the number of teeth from the rear to the front. So on the rear I have 16, and at the front I have 32, which means I can cruise around quite comfortably, and if it gets to a hill, I might have to get out the saddle a little bit and churn up. Obviously, to make it easier, you just increase the number of cogs at the rear, or reduce the size of the chainring at the front. Now, rather than using the Mountainbike cranks, I've gone for an old set of BMX cranks, which can be a bit problematic, as the Q factor on BMXs is slightly wider. This axle requires a lot of spacing, and if you have a good bike fit, you may compromise that with your wider stance, so be careful. It may be easy enough to just change out a chainring that isn't hopped up to make sure you have a nice, stable base for you and your single speed bike. Now, depending on what dropouts you have on your current bike, it may be that you need to get a tensioner like this one. Removing the derailleur means you can put this tensioner onto that same point. The spacer on the 1 conversion kit is thicker on one side and thinner on the other, making sure that you have the ability to shift that cog either left or right to get the alignment with that front chainring just perfect. There's a little Allen key on the back there to get that alignment just right as it pulls off that rear chainring. Sprockets on the Gusset 1 conversion kit come in 16 and 18. As I mentioned, I've gone for 16, and it feels pretty good. When you're breaking the chain, you want to give it the right amount of distance. There's a tiny bit of slack, but not too much. That tension needs to be working, but there's no point having it just touch the chain. You'll also see here that I'm using a half-link chain. That is more down to aesthetics than practicality. With the Gusset 1 conversion kit and the single speed tensioner, there is a hoop which makes sure the chain will always stay on that rear sprocket. But to run this half-link chain, I've taken it off. The single speed tensioner still works fine. In the woods at the moment, it's been riding pretty well, and there's been no problems going through the slop. But I have taken off the flat pedals and put on clips again, meaning I can keep a steadier cadence and make sure I'm not hammering down and churning through the mud, which means I will spin. I'm really enjoying the bike so far, and aesthetically I feel single speed is a really nice look. I've got to be honest, after coming off a money ride yesterday, this bike was so easy to clean, with no faff and no having to get in between derailleurs and jockey wheels. That being said, the ride was harder, but as I go through the winter, I'm going to get fitter because of it. and finding new trails to ride in different ways because of the Singlespeed. I'm excited to find out how it feels going forward, and in the meantime, if you have any questions, leave some comments below and we'll catch up with you next time.